Welcome back, everybody. Today we're discussing Raised by Wolves, episodes 4 and 5. Starting off, let me just say I did not expect 2 episodes to be released, and seeing as the first week had 3, I can't tell if this is going to be the norm or if they will switch to single episode releases as the series continues. I do know the first season will have 10 episodes, so this week puts us already halfway through, which makes me worry I won't be reviewing this for as long as I wanted, but hopefully they switch to the 1 episode per week now that the viewers are hooked. So, let's begin with episode 4, titled Nature's Course. The episode begins with Paul still in danger and his mouse companion falling to its death. Thankfully, Mother was there to save Paul, and we get a closer look at what exists at the bottom of these holes, and the first look at the power that Mother uses frequently in these 2 episodes, and that is sleep. If you recall, I discussed the mouse being a symbolic link between Paul and his parents, and now that we see it die, Paul and Campion bond more than ever. He's moving away from the life and the imposter parents that he has because, he thinks they're dead, and finding comfort in the people that he now knows. The biblical march through the sands halt when the church finds a giant 12-sided die and they declare that it was created by intelligent life. I thought the same thing. Clearly something is going on here, and they aren't the only ones living here. I'm curious about the cracks in the structure, and I'm curious if it at all relates to the doll here. Not exactly sure why this was the first thing I thought of when I saw this, but this mysterious structure could either be God itself or a giant dormant creature, for all we know. I feel like it's impossible to tell right now. The church feels so sure that it is a structure built for them, and for that reason alone, I feel like it isn't. Maybe it's not even a structure at all. I do believe this doll may have been created by this mysterious figure they find in the snake bones later on, and it may have been left as a warning, perhaps, of this thing that's laying in the sand. Mother brings Paul back to the camp and finds the beast locked in the storeroom. Mother and father discuss what to do, and Mother apologizes for her rude comments about his kindness. She is trying to rebuild the trust between them, and father steps away, untrusting, but still wanting to be taken seriously as someone who can defend the family, someone who is useful. This worry about not being the proper robot man of the house is an interesting one, but it is very prevalent in both of these episodes. Back inside the house, Paul discusses how grateful he was to Mother for saving him, and sure enough, Hunter said the only reason Mother and father saved them was because they prayed to Soul for saving. They discuss this idea of heaven, and it sways Campion further to believing. All dogs don't go to Soul's heaven, but people that believe do, and it's the reason that he doesn't wish to kill the beast later on. Campion talks to father and wants to provide for his friends, finding them food. It's a noble gesture, and it's a courageous one. He is the only human that's able to eat the food there, so if the androids didn't exist, he could go out and find food for the others, since they have 0, and spending those calories would only result in quicker death if they were unsuccessful. Even from this early age, he's very naturally becoming a leader, and I want to point out that the fungus they find later on was only found because of Campion's brave climb into the hole. Mother then melts down the medallions, and she creates a scalpel. She puts Tempest to sleep and removes the tracker, then does the same with all of the other children. Before she puts Tempest to sleep, however, she discusses father's inadequacies, finding that the only thing she really needs him for is the humor that he provides, and maybe not even to her, but to the children. Mother flies off with the trackers and drops them into a shallow crevasse, which means this is where the cloaked figure gets them, and every time Mary thinks that Mother is moving them, it's actually the mystery man after this point. I think she didn't drop them in one of the giant holes that, is this reoccurring theme, because she feared they would be destroyed, so without the signal, they would just go to the place where the signal was last, and that would, of course, be the colony. Back in the sands of hell, Mary pleads for them to continue after the children, and they decide against it, believing this to be a sign from Saul. Instead, she gets her husband a few more hours of hard labor, trying to pry it open without explosives. Campion and father go looking for food and find a possible nut that looks to have potential for the others, but the lander analysis says otherwise. Eating them would have killed the children even faster. While that was going on, Mary helps Ambrose with his hand and accidentally reveals that she did not know the childhood rhyme that all Mithraic children should know, further sparking the suspicions that he has for them. Back in the settlement, Mother and Father talk about the natural process of childbirth as she works on the remaining artificial wombs and the machine that would take care of them outside of the body. Father immediately disagrees with this and ultimately leaves it to her discretion, but really stands firm that this should not happen. But Mother brings up Tempest not wanting this child because of how it was conceived. Now, I'm actually a little suspicious of Mother here. I don't believe she cares for Tempest's wish at all. I think that she knows the child would have a higher chance of survival if she cared for it herself, so she tries to do that. We don't know what damaged it at this point, nor why she calls them snowballs, but it's explained later that Campion and the other children were playing with the machine and broke it, and the fetuses that still existed. He lied to the others to keep them from knowing what they actually broke and the lives that they just took. And, another early sign that compassion has been inside of him since the start, and I think Mother knew Tempest would do something later on. Later that night, back in the desert, Marcus was sabotaged by Ambrose's android, and right before he kills Marcus, the bug was discovered. Mary then pulls a gun and kills the android with the greatest follow-up ever.
Anyway, it looks like she can still be repaired. No repair necessary.
Father wishes to have the children kill the beast, and their privileged existence comes to a point with their dire situation. They must eat meat to survive. Goodness will not fill your stomach. Holly takes charge, stabbing the beast and then running away with the others. Mother finds a part of the Ark that still has an uplink to the simulation and enters to find her own memories. Now, I thought this was a little odd at first, how it was creating scenes from her own being and not, a shared realm like it felt when the other humans were in it. But I guess that could be explained by the line where it says, "This is not made for androids," as she enters. Then, back in the desert, they realize their mistake with the lullaby, make a plan to split from the group, and then the harsh cold threatens to kill all of them before sunrise. The mysterious obelisk has stopped producing heat, and Marcus sees a chance to out Ambrose as a non-believer, someone who had lost their faith. Now, here is where it gets really good. I think he intended to do exactly as his wife said and blow a hole into it so they could survive. But he starts hearing voices and decides against it. He hands the explosives off and starts preaching to the crowd. His entire attitude changes at this moment. His eyes widen. He slams Ambrose against the wall that was illuminating out of the blue. It was as if the structure itself used Marcus to protect itself, and together they killed Ambrose. He dies being burnt alive by what everyone around him imagined to be Saul's doing, but I still have my doubts. This was a jaw-dropping moment for me that just added to the magic of this show. I could not believe he had such a rapid switch to manipulate the group and was able to literally smite a man who knew that he was the imposter. I wonder what mysteries this thing holds inside, and I wonder, like I said before, if it was talking to Marcus telepathically, telling him to take charge like he did, like it was a self-defense mechanic so that they didn't blow it up. I also feel in some kind of way this relates to the mysterious images that people are seeing of Tally. She was one of the people that fell into the hole, so I wonder if the voices, the hallucinations, the child leading people in the forest, if all of that is connected. It feels connected. I don't know how, but it does. Not to mention this mysterious heating could also mirror the heating in the holes. I also want to add, now that we're talking about it, that last episode when Paul falls into the hole, he was running after the ghost of Tally. I think something messes with the minds of people and lures prey into these holes for consumption. I think the single mystery person or creature living alone may be fighting against this force, or may just be the last living member of their race, after this planet and its mysteries consumed all of them too. Think about it. This thing probably isn't human, or maybe is an evolved human, because of the way it moves. It also doesn't attack the invaders of its home. It runs away, letting strangers stay the night. It makes stars out of the bone ceiling, which likely points wherever they're from, because otherwise they could just look at the night sky and see the stars. Or maybe not. I don't know. They made a map of the area, and the stars were assumed a part of that, but they made a map of an area that they probably have known for years. Maybe this was strictly for tracking the humans, keeping note on the children in particular, but I don't know, this feels like it was left for them to find the children. Maybe he was tracking Campion, and this was someone who was able to survive such a harsh environment when others were not. It is undoubtedly humanoid, but it may just be a straightforward human. The increased speed and agility could be explained by years of survival in this environment. Also, let me point out that every time we see Tally in this form, what looks like snow is falling or blowing through the air. I think that it is in fact not snow, but whatever is coming up from the holes. Some kind of particle filling the air that is causing people to see that which isn't there, which is why the mystery creature remains covered, not breathing any of it in directly, or maybe it's just snow and I'm stretching here. I don't know. Tempest ends up killing the beast and finds out that it was pregnant, causing her to freak out about the idea of being this beast, about being the vessel or strictly meat, not being an individual. But it also shows that she is strong enough to provide for the others when they can't. Tempest and Campion are both strong people that stand out to me, and I think that there's a reason for that. But now we're on to episode 5. The episode begins with this person or creature finding the trackers that Mother left, and us seeing the aftermath of the cold night in the desert. Mary talks to her husband about the voices that he heard, and he immediately dismisses it, finding it easier to explain to her that it was just a side effect rather than what it really was. I believe that he worries that he would sound like a crazy person to her, and probably to himself too, now that it's the light of day. But here's the thing, this could be pointing to God talking to him, or his mind being messed with by the structure in order to protect itself. I think he undoubtedly heard those voices, but he doesn't understand the source and believes maybe it could be Soul, which he was conditioned for years to believe does not exist. He heard something that could never happen. He doesn't want to believe the obvious answer in a room full of people that would believe that answer because, like him, I don't think that Soul is really speaking to him, but I do believe that he was spoken to. He takes his position as leader of the faith and immediately gets challenged by Ambrose's number 2. The only reason he was able to stay leading the group is because of this man who respects Marcus a great deal for forgiving his father for something that we still don't know. This person has been instrumental to their success in this faction, and I worry that once that secret is revealed, it will change things dramatically, and maybe once again paint the picture that the church is evil in Marcus and Mary's eyes. The thing that he forgave may have been murder or rape, just as the other high-ranking official we met also did, right? And it may have been against Mary or even Paul. We just don't know at this point. Paul, seeing this man, may revolt him and change the dynamic drastically. But for now, he remains loyal to Marcus, even calls him a prophet, which the others agree with and immediately support. It seems for now, he is still useful. They depart for the children, and we return to a nice plate of alien brisket. Mother and father fight about his inability to protect the children again, and discuss him seeing something that we know was the image of Tally. The church continues marching, finding a part of the Ark still together, and a weapon that could help against the necromancer. They also find Otho, the rapist that assaulted Tempest and many others, and I am so happy that they are still in this story. This character is considered a monster by all who know him, and to my surprise, it was Marcus that allowed him to live, even if it is only as cannon fodder. I'm sure that he will live to see Tempest again at some point, and then she will kill him herself when she gets the chance, especially since we know that she is now willing to face off against monsters when given the opportunity. It is a truly poetic setup that they have here, and I love the idea of a mobile prison system and him praying to Soul, believing that it was he who commanded him to rape these women and children. Unlike Marcus, I don't believe that he heard anything. This feels very much like an official of a church that was caught and searching for God again now that the world knows his true villainy. His desperate cries for Soul to speak to him again come off not as a genuine cry for help, but a cry in front of others. We don't know explicitly how praying works in this faith, but I believe he probably could have prayed silently instead of in front of the entire group all times that we hear him pray. Him doing that feels like a manipulation to the group to let them know that he's sorry. He is a trapped cockroach doing everything he can to stay alive and keep being a cockroach. But back in the colony, Tempest stays inside while the others start training to hunt with rocks, probably making her feel useless and more like a burden than she cares to, as Mother talks about her being a salmon. Paul and Campion throw rocks at one of the beasts, which just looks like a terrible idea. Luckily, it doesn't attack, and instead they retrieve some of the fungus that it was eating. Good job, Campion, for noticing that. The fact that the beast was scaling the walls of this hole, and we see a horizontal hole, a smaller hole, like the one that the church had near them, makes me wonder if this species tunnels between these giant holes, creating a network like ants in order to retrieve food from each of them and stay safe underground while doing so. Cassia drops off food for the lovely couple, and I don't think I've ever wanted to see 3 people have sex more in my life. Sadly, Mary doesn't feel the same and teases Marcus about his newfound worship. She feels insecure, and thankfully it turns into a play fight rather than a real one that would expose them. But I think that this insecurity and, maybe justified insecurity may bubble and burst into something legitimate at a later point. Mother and Father talk about the beasts being nocturnal, and she goes off to track their movements from the sky, something we don't see her successful with because, as I theorized before, I think they live in these tunnels. They have another fight about Father not learning from his mistakes. This is a very belittling moment for him, like as if she's talking to a child. And again, I want to credit how good the dialogue between them is. I don't feel like they're just swapping out words, right? Like, they're not using processor instead of heart kind of thing. It feels genuine, as if these would really talk this way. She doesn't believe in his abilities and worries that she can't leave the children alone with him, something that I think many mothers deal with, human or otherwise. We once again see Tally and the particles filling the air, and she runs to the simulation chamber. After she enters, we see Tally somehow inside, and we see Earth before everything was destroyed. She sees herself as the necromancer about to kill a small atheist child before Campion stops her. It's explained later, but the reason she doesn't remember this is because it was archived by Campion after she was changed, and I think we have to assume the reason she can access it now is because of what the simulation programming is accessing for her, right? Let me also address something that was pointed out in the comments of my last video. I believe that the necromancer was an atheist tool. It was in fact not. It was clearly created by the church, as we learn very clearly from this episode, meaning the very clear religious symbolism was their doing, and it was probably purposeful, which makes it even more interesting because it was the church creating these godlike beings. I don't know a better way to say that a church has lost their faith and, the whole thing is corrupt, other than them literally blasphemously creating gods. The story of her progress here and becoming a caretaker android, not hell-bent on atheist destruction, is pretty good. We learned that the Earth is running low on oxygen, meaning that the atheists probably wanted to stop the church from doing something that was causing the destruction of our atmosphere or the expenditure of oxygen, right? Seeing as they were the big powerful forces that had androids, that had giant arcs, that seemed to have this wealth of power and money, and the atheists had to turn to children's soldiers because ultimately they had nothing else. I think the atheists probably warned them, then eventually this threatened their way of living, this lavish lifestyle way of living that it appears they had, causing this war. It's still just a theory, but I feel like the lack of oxygen in the area points to this resource consumption, and since it's not the atheist side that's building necromancers and arcs and has all of this technology, I think this builds an even clearer picture about who caused this war and ultimately why Earth became uninhabitable. We also learn that Campion himself was someone from this privileged religious world that turned away from the church and was labeled a traitor. Instead of some massive resistance plot, it now looks like he was maybe acting alone, trying to build a better humanity by himself, even when all other hope was lost. The process was long and hard, but eventually finished. They developed a relationship between creator and creation during this time, and in order to keep her focused on the mission, he wiped the memories of this. If not for the Ark landing here, I think this likely never would have been unlocked. And I think if Father ever learns of this, he will feel even worse, feel like even lesser of an importance to Mother. The simulation ends with a haunting message about the children being in danger, and she returns to find Tempest trying to kill herself and or the baby. She saves her, and we're left with a ton of questions about how she knew something was happening so far away. Now, there's a technology aspect that could explain it, and there's also a bit of foreshadowing that I talked about earlier, where she may have sensed that, something was going to happen with Tempest here. We return to the church. They find a giant snake cave, a few booby traps, and a very shy inhabitant. They discover the map, the stars, and where the children are being kept, which reminded me right away that Marcus has actually already been there. The mystery of their location really wasn't all that big of a mystery, though I guess the mystery person moving the trackers and then the church being unwilling to go after them is really what hindered the journey so far. But Mother and Father talk, and Father makes a remark about Mother starting to sound like a believer, which is utterly amazing. This idea that she becomes religious is amazing. I mean, whether that is soul or becomes religious in the sense of being the god of this land, both sound super interesting. Now that we know the troubles that Campion had programming her, and she remembers that she was once a necromancer programmed by the church, more of these coded feelings may come back. These two very distinct sides of her may start having more conflict than ever before, and I can't wait to see how that manifests. Campion and Paul become close friends. Mother hums a tune that marks a change in her, likely caused by remembering this companionship that she felt for her creator. She's in love, right? And I think maybe Father's a little uncomfortable. I think maybe everyone at this dinner table is a little uncomfortable that she's humming right now. Marcus questions Otho about his actions, and he maintains that he once heard a voice of Saul until the church turned against him. This haunts Marcus because he is an imposter that may one day be revealed, and since the voice has blessed him into this position, that may stop if the others find out. The happy couple start having sex. He starts tripping balls and sees what can probably be interpreted as a prophetic vision. Sex, stars, blood. Everything, right? She's bleeding from her chest, and we see that he is holding the scalpel that Mother created. I wonder if the sex won't lead to her being pregnant, and if the attack on Mother and Father fails, if Mother won't try to kill Mary, only to realize that she is with child and then cut the fetus out of her like Tempest wanted done to her. I feel like that may be what this vision is trying to tell us, but I am very interested in this, and I'm very interested to hear your comments as well, specifically about this. What do you guys think this means? And does this mean ultimately the end of Mary, or perhaps simply the blood being on her hands, right? He once again hears the voices, and his eyes widen just like they did before. The only thing that isn't here is the particles in the air, which either disproves my theory about the hallucinations or just they weren't present because they were under the snakehead. Then, of course, they find the settlement and the children again. I think the tunnels may be a part of the plan. If they all do connect, this may be an easy way to lure the children away. Then they could move without being spotted from the air. But then they may come across more of the beasts that I think live down there. So I see failure in their future, but ultimately that was the episode, and this is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I do, again, hope you comment and let me know what you thought of it. A special thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon, including this month's highest tier donors, Michael Linck, Robert Holtz, and Channing Corley. Much love, everybody, and please let me know your thoughts, questions, and theories in the comments below. Thank you, everybody. Can't wait to talk to you all again soon.